Hi, I'm Beverly Harzog, host of Your Personal Economy. I have a special guest here with me today, Gerri Detweiler, business credit expert and co author of Finance Your Own Business. She is here today to talk about business credit. So, if you've got your own business or you're even just thinking about starting a business and you've been wondering about business credit, well, stick with us because she is going to tell you everything you need to know. Gerri, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Beverly. Thank you.
Yeah, Gerri and I worked together for a long time. We go way back in the credit industry. And you are always my go-to business expert. So, Gerri, if somebody is thinking about, trying to build business credit, what's the first step they should take? And do you think it's a good idea for entrepreneurs or independent contractors, whatever business you've got? Do you think it's a good idea to really work on that business credit? Does it help you out?
Yeah, a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, even established business owners, don't realize that their business can have its own credit report. And these business credit reporting agencies are big business. They've been around for many, many years. In fact, Dun& Bradstreet is one of the oldest credit bureaus in the United States. Abraham Lincoln worked for them back in the day as a credit reporter. So this is really important information, but a lot of business owners aren't aware of it because we don't have the same laws and transparency that we do on the consumer credit side. So you know very well, Beverly, from all your work that on the consumer credit side, we have the right to free annual credit reports. We have the right to dispute mistakes. We get disclosures if we're turned down for credit based on our credit scores. None of that really applies to business credit. So what it means is that a lot of business owners aren't aware of business credit until it impacts their business. And I'm sure you and I would agree that the best time to work on your credit is before you need it, not when there's a problem.
Yes, that is very wise advice because you can't just instantly create credit. It does take a couple of steps to get there and a little bit of time. So, how do people register to get like an EIN and to try to develop business credit?
Yeah, so the process of building business credit is to essentially make sure that you're on the radar of these commercial credit reporting agencies. The main ones are Dun& Bradstreet, Experian, and Equifax. And then to build credit references with accounts that report to those agencies. It's a little more work than it is on the consumer side because on the consumer side, it happens a little bit more automatically. You get a auto loan or a credit card or a student loan, mortgage, it's going to show up on your personal credit. Not not necessarily so on the business credit side. So sometimes you have to take more steps. But the very first step, and this even precedes getting any kind of accounts that show up in your credit, and that is to make sure that you work on your business reputation because ultimately business credit is a means for someone to assess the risk of doing business with your company. It could be a creditor, it could be a lender, but it also could be an insurance company. It could be a telecom. It could be another business. You want to be a contractor or a supplier to another business. They often check business credit. It might be a government contract. So you want to create that foundation. And part of that is ideally forming some kind of a business entity, LLC, corporation, something like that. You can build business credit as a sole proprietorship, which is basically when you just start a business and you don't form any kind of legal entity. But at that point, legally, you and your business are the same thing. So you never truly get away from personal credit if you're operating as a sole proprietorship. So that's one of the steps that I do recommend. And then the employer identification number, EIN. You can think of that sort of like a social security number, but for your business. Not every business needs one, but you can get one. You can get it for free from the IRS. And it's not quite the same as your social security number is for business credit in that sometimes the credit bureau has that information, sometimes they don't. What typically happens is information comes to the credit reporting agency and they create a file and they assign their own identification number, sort of like they create their own version of a social security number for you to keep all your information together. So it's a little bit different process. But the one thing I want to just back up to again and repeat again is that this is all about risk, about how your business is perceived from a risk perspective. So, things that I will see new business owners do that sometimes are not ideal. For example, using a Yahoo email address or a Gmail email address or something like that, isn't quite as professional. Maybe using their home address, which you can do, but then also home phone number, home cell phone. You don't really establish that relationship that you are that perception that you're a real business. And I think that's an important step, not just from a credit perspective, but also just for the reputation of your business with potential customers as well.
That's a really good point about not having a professional email address. And all right, if you shouldn't use your home address, do you suggest a PO box?
You can. Now, you certainly can use your home address. There are plenty of businesses that operate that way. I have my own business. I operate from home. And it's become more common, but you want it to make sense for the creditor or person who's looking at the credit report. So if it doesn't make sense for them, then it could end up as a deterrent. You can get a PO box, and I'll use a mailbox service for my business because I don't really want to put my home address on my website or, in the public. I'm sure someone could find it if they want to, but I'd prefer not to use that. So that's also another possibility.
All right, thanks. I'm so glad that you brought that up because, when you're thinking about how someone perceives your business risk, and I focus on the consumer side of things. And so I know what happens when a person appears risky, all kinds of things can happen, lower credit limits, stuff like that. So, what else can somebody do to try to appear more professional? You mentioned Dun and Bradstreet. I know that it's possible to apply for a Dunn's number. Is that correct?
Correct. So Dun and Bradstreet's identifier in their system is called the Dunn's number, and you can actually go to their website and you can request a Dunn's number for free. So that is one step you can take to establish a process. It used to be that number was required for government contracts. So if you wanted to be in the government contracting system, you'd go get a Dunn's number, and as a result, it became something that you'd proactively do. They've changed that in recent years. Now the government has its own identifying system, but Dunn's number is still used as an identifier in the Dun and Bradstreet system. Equifax and Experian use their own identifiers, and they do not require you to take any steps, or they don't even let you take any steps to get that number. Instead, what will happen with those bureaus is they will either pull information if you create an LLC or a corporation at the state level, or if they get information from a creditor, a company that reports that says you now have an account with this credit card company or this lender or supplier, and that will start your file. So you don't have to do anything proactive there. So once you have sort of this foundation, then the next step is you need accounts that show up on your business credit, and you need to pay them on time. And again, it's a little bit different than consumer credit because not every company reports, and some companies report just negative information, but don't report positive information.
What can you do to increase your trade lines on your business credit report? I know probably getting a business credit card might be a good idea. Can you also talk to suppliers about reporting to your business credit report? Can you negotiate that sort of thing?
Yeah, so a trade line refers to an account that shows up on your business credit. So it could be a credit card, a loan, or supplier credit. What's interesting in the business credit world, at least to me, and you and I both love to delve into credit details, is how much supplier and trade credit, how important it is in the business world. So supplier or trade credit is where I'm a business. I need something from another business. Maybe I have a bakery and I need flour and butter and sugar and milk, cream, all those ingredients, right? And instead of paying for them up front, if my supplier lets me get them on payment terms, then I can buy now and pay later. And hopefully in the meantime, make those cupcakes or cakes, sell them, and pay out of cash flow. So it's a very important type of credit in the business world. And that's often a good starting point. Now, just like we mentioned a moment ago, some suppliers report, some don't. So sometimes you should start with any suppliers you are doing business with. Ask them, do you have a credit program? If so, how do I apply? What's your criteria? If they don't, there are some accounts that are easy to get. They're often referred to as net 30 vendors that will let you buy shipping boxes or Keurig cups or, office supplies, janitorial supplies on a net 30 basis. And if you pay on time, you build a credit reference that can help you build your business credit history. And I am consulting with NAV, and NAV does have a list of those net 30 vendors that I frequently update. So that's one place to start to find them.
Oh, I'm glad you brought up that resource. So that's nav.com. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. And if you go to the
Yes, that
blog,
is.
just nav.com/blog, type in net 30, you'll find the list that we keep updated with net 30 vendors that don't check personal credit, do report to business credit.
All right. That's fabulous. And I know I've recently been on that site because I was doing a little research for this episode, and you're all over the place there. So I know I'm getting great information from an expert.
Good.
So I really encourage everybody to, increase your knowledge about business credit by going to nav.com. You'll find just a wealth of information. So let's talk about business credit cards for just a minute. I mentioned earlier, I'm on the consumer side of things. With the business credit cards, they're a little bit different, but don't they usually look at your personal credit at first unless you've already developed some type of business credit? So you do have to have good personal credit in the beginning, don't you?
Yeah, and actually, most of the small business credit cards that you and I talk about, ones I know you've written
Mhm.
about many times in the past, most of those check personal credit, but don't check business credit. It's usually not until you get to what's called a corporate card level that your business credit really becomes a major factor. So it is a trade-off on the business credit card side that you probably will have a personal credit check, but most of the small business credit cards don't report to personal, and they do report to at least one of the business credit repositories. So that payment history, if you pay on time and manage your debt well, just like you do on the consumer side, you can help to build your credit history. So they can be a really good tool there. And I know, one thing that you have talked about in the past, Beverly, is the whole issue of credit utilization, where you're using too much of your available credit, and that brings down your credit scores. And an example of this in the business world was I was at a session with a business advisor, said he had a client and her business was doing fine, but some financing fell through at the last minute. She decided to proceed with her plans anyway. So she maxed out all her credit cards, business and personal, to make it happen. And it was okay. It's like she did okay. She made minimum payments, and the business did well enough that she was able to then refinance all that debt with a small business loan and pay off the personal credit cards. And her personal credit scores went up over 100 points when she paid down that debt, because those high balances were just really hurting her credit. And so there's pros and cons of business credit cards, but one of the advantages for a small business owner or freelancer or independent contractor is that you can keep that, usually, as long as you pay, can keep that debt off your personal credit, avoid those issues of utilization at times where you might need, to carry a balance, and then build your business credit by paying on time and keeping your balances in check.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. I use my rewards credit cards for just about everything. And so sometimes I'll pay twice during the month just to be sure I keep my utilization ratio in check. And so you made an important point that it's important, even with the business credit card, you've got some of the same things to think about it in order to maintain a good credit score.
Yeah, exactly. You want to
Yeah.
really focus on payment history and debt.
Mm-hmm.
And with business credit, it's actually a little bit more granular than with personal credit, because on the personal credit side, if let's say, your payment on that credit card is due on January 15th and you get busy, you go on vacation, you go in the hospital, whatever, you accidentally don't pay it till February 1st or something, 15 days late. Typically, that's not reported as late to the personal credit bureaus. With business credit usually uses something called DBT, or days beyond terms. So it looks at what the due date is and how many days past the due date you paid an account. And it can report that you were 2 days late or 5 days late with a payment. While a couple days late probably, I can't say never, probably won't sink your credit scores. It absolutely helps to have on-time payments on your business credit. And so you want to be even more cognizant with business credit about trying to make sure that you're making those payments on time so you can keep your credit history on the, upward track rather than bringing it down.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, when we were talking about risk earlier, I mean, if you can't pay your bills on time, that makes you look very risky,
Yeah.
whether it's a business or on the consumer side.
Yeah.
Uh, let's talk about credit scores for just a second, because, on the consumer side, we talk about FICO scores and other score versions a lot. Business credit scores are a little different, aren't they?
They're a lot different.
Do we need another
Oh my
episode for
gosh.
this?
Yeah, we do. We do. We need a whole chart.
Well,
Well,
maybe just in a nutshell
yeah,
to give us kind of a.
there's only one FICO score for small business. It's called the FICO SPSS. Currently, the most usual range is 0 to 300, with 300 being the best. They have a new version of it that will look more like a consumer score range, 300 to 850, that they're implementing. And then each of the bureaus have their own scores, and most of them have multiple scores. So you might have heard about a certain score, but their chances are the bureau has 6, except for Experian, which has just the IntelliScore in different versions. They have different scores, all with different score ranges often. So whereas in the consumer world, most people familiar with credit scores know it's probably going to be 300 to 850 for your credit score range. For business credit, it can be all over the place. So what I tell people is the first thing is just to check your business credit, because most business owners don't even know it exists. They don't check it. They don't know if it's accurate. They have no idea. And then if you look at a score, don't get so hung up on the number, but really look at, where you fall in the range. Does it indicate your business is higher risk or lower risk? And what can you do about it? I think similar to consumer credit, you really focus on, hey, what can I do to make this better? What can I do to avoid problems? As opposed to just saying, well, I have to have an 825 because Beverly has one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, we'll have to do another episode just on business credit scores.
I don't know.
Okay, can people, and we talked about a list of net 30 vendors earlier. So it would be a good idea maybe to look at that list and see if you can work with some of these vendors to help build your business credit. Perhaps they would report that to your business credit report. Is that one of the best ways, that perhaps getting a business credit card? There any other way you might recommend for getting started on business credit?
Yeah, those are some of the easiest ways to get started, is to get those trade lines from easy net 30 vendors, from a business credit card, again, and paying on time. The great thing is, I know, a lot of people are struggling right now financially, and sometimes you start a business because you don't have a lot of other options, or because you want to start a business on the side with the hopes that it's going to, provide financial freedom in the future. And you can start this process regardless of your personal credit. So that's the good thing. You might not get all the major business credit cards, but there are cards out there you can probably get. And same thing with the vendor accounts, where a lot of them don't even check personal credit. So as long as you set those foundational steps up, then you can start to establish business credit. But I will caution that business and personal credit both matter. So if you're watching videos that make it sound like, oh, the magic ticket to all this money you need for your business is just to establish business credit, then you'll never have to worry about personal credit again, I have news for you. It's probably not the case. You really need to work on both, because a lot of lenders do check personal credit, and some of the best financing options that you may want for your business, like a bank loan or like an SBA guaranteed loan, is probably going to check personal credit. Not only that, they're going to check personal credit on all the major owners of the business. So if you're going into a partnership with your friend or somebody you know, you need to have a conversation about credit, personal credit, because there's a very good chance, if you decide to seek traditional financing, that the lender will require credit checks for both or even all of you, depending on your ownership percentage. And that could be a factor that either helps your business or hurts it.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that. If you've got partnerships, that they would be looking at their credit as well. That's really a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. Is there anything else you would like to add that I haven't asked you?
Yeah, I would say I know I hope we haven't made it sound too complicated. It's not super complicated. But every step that we've talked about is a step that helps you build a business that will last, right? So
Mhm.
even if it's a one-page website, having that, having saved or grabbed that, real estate on the internet is good for you. Really researching your business name to make sure it's not already trademarked somewhere else, or there's not another business by someone. This constantly trips up businesses. So I'll give you a quick example, Beverly. Nav had a customer who had an insurance agency, and he was trying to get errors and omissions insurance, which is, the insurance that helps protect his business if it makes a mistake. And he was having trouble getting it. And it turned out that his business credit had information about another business with the same name in a different state, and it was negative, and it was on his business credit. And so it was causing him to get denied for insurance. A lot of times people don't think much beyond that. Oh, this is a really fun name. I like it. But you want to research it? Who else is out there with that name? What domain names are out there? Is there a trademark that I could potentially violate if I want to do business, under that name? Those little steps, I know they sound kind of tedious, but they really do make a difference, because then you're setting yourself up for long-term success. You've got an asset there besides just a credit score. You've got a business that maybe you can grow, maybe you can sell, maybe it can be acquired, by somebody else. And it's just good for the long run.
Yeah, that's great advice. Your business is an investment in your own future.
Mhm.
So every detail is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jerry, thank you so much for joining me for this episode to talk about business credit. We have learned so much from you, and I've realized this is a gigantic topic, and I would love to have you back sometime to talk more about it.
Okay, lots of fun. Thanks, Beverly.
Thank you so much for joining me for episode number 35. We talked about how to establish business credit with credit expert Gerri Detweiler. Gerri is also the co-author of the book Finance Your Own Business, and I highly recommend that book for you. Okay, anybody who's starting a business or even thinking about it, check out that book. She's also an education consultant for nav.com, which is also another great resource for business owners who want to establish credit. Coming up next, I'm going to talk about the 5 things I quit to save more money. If you're enjoying my podcast, please subscribe right here on YouTube. Thanks for joining me.